Kalorama, a recorded books Highbridge imprint, presents No Safe Spaces. Edited by Dennis Prager and Mark Joseph. Foreword by Adam Carolla. Read by John Mclain. Foreword by Adam Carolla. I grew up in North Hollywood, California. Sounds glamorous, right? Well, if the Hollywood you're picturing is celebrities at a white tablecloth five-star restaurant with 7 different forks, North Hollywood is a diner where the waitresses blow smoke rings while pouring your coffee. Growing up on food stamps and welfare, I barely graduated high school and went right to work in construction. Let me be clear, this was not the construction you see in TV ads with well-groomed white guys in hard hats looking at blueprints. I did manual labor, digging ditches, cleaning up garbage, and other work fit for a donkey. I worked hard, paid attention, and listened to the guys with experience, and learned the trade of a carpenter. Just like Jesus. Construction is lonely work, and often my only company was a radio, tuned to, you guessed it, the Dennis Prager Show. It never occurred to me that someday I would be on Dennis's show, where he would be interviewing me. But it happened in 2011, and it became immediately clear that despite very different paths in life, we shared important values. I've often said that the thing Dennis and I have in common is common sense. We believe in individualism, that by taking responsibility for our fates, we make our own success. For Dennis, that meant going off the beaten path in high school and college. For me, it meant launching my own radio show without a radio station. We both spend hours each week interviewing interesting people, and like any good talk junkie, we crave open, interesting discussion. We both need that hit every day. That authenticity is critical if you want to engage with and understand the world. My parents were checked-out messes who played victim like Eric Clapton plays guitar. So I respect anyone with the intellectual honesty to assert and also challenge his own beliefs. Since way back in 2011, at the time of my first interview on his show, Dennis and I haven't seen nearly enough of that type of ego-checking happening in America. In fact, even then the concept of free thought was under attack in the very place it should have been thriving. Academia. Wow, academia. Pretty big word for a guy who barely graduated high school. So it seemed only natural that Dennis and I would go into the belly of the beast and start speaking on college campuses, warning parents, students, and faculty about the dangers of shutting down free speech that was deemed politically incorrect or provocative. Ironically, as you're about to hear, they promptly proved us right. The good news is there are other ways to reach a large audience with an important message. That's why we teamed up with producer Mark Joseph to create a movie called No Safe Spaces. And that's why the two of them decided to publish this book by the same name. What follows is a sometimes funny, often disturbing, but always insightful look at a real problem facing America today. Mark and Dennis do a superb job recounting and expounding on the horror stories we encountered on campuses across the nation. Along the way, you'll meet some of America's top experts on free speech, and you may even glean some insights and observations from the Ace Man. If you're interested in defending the liberal tradition of free speech, or even if you're just curious about why a Jewish intellectual, Dennis, the son of missionaries, Mark, and an atheist from Hollywood, moi, that's Mexican for me, would team up to take on big academia, then listen on. Chapter 1. Showing up for work is the new racism. Professor Brett Weinstein couldn't believe his own eyes. Were people spying on him? As Weinstein, an Evergreen State College biology professor who considers himself deeply progressive, biked into town from his house that early spring morning in 2017, He could have sworn he saw students from the school eyeing him suspiciously as he pedaled by. What were they doing in his neighborhood? The professor had good reason to be on edge. He had found himself at the center of a heated and very one-sided discussion about race at this very progressive liberal arts college located in Olympia, Washington. It hadn't gone well. What started as a public meeting chaired by the college president soon devolved into a protest in which Weinstein was shouted at and shouted down. That morning, for the second day in a row, the campus police had told him it would be better if he didn't show up on campus. If he wasn't around, maybe things would cool off a bit. But Weinstein had a biology class to teach, so he arranged to meet his students at a park downtown, off school property. That Thursday morning, May 2017, he tucked his crop of unruly black hair into a bike helmet and pedaled his way into town, looking every bit the stereotypical liberal college professor straight out of Central Casting. He could not have looked more the part if he had been wearing a beret. But through the rural, tree-lined roads near his house, he noticed something weird. "I saw people that I recognized from the protest the day before," Weinstein said. As he biked past them, Weinstein thought he saw them taking out their phones, as if they were sending messages. Was he really being tailed by student protesters? It sure seemed like it. Unsettled, Weinstein went to Evergreen after all, right to the campus police department. He told them what he had seen, though he realized how kooky he must sound. "I must be imagining it," Weinstein concluded. The police disagreed. They told Weinstein the protesters had been looking for him. Worse still, the police told Professor Brett Weinstein that they couldn't protect him. What crime had this monster Brett Weinstein committed to enrage a group of Evergreen State College students? He showed up to work. When you think of people needing protection, you may think of a former mafioso going into a witness protection program. But Evergreen's Vito Corleone was a Birkenstock-clad interdisciplinary studies major who is convinced the only reason we all aren't wearing hemp shirts is the after-effects of 19th century British mercantilism. Before 2017, Evergreen State College might have been best known as the alma mater of rapper Macklemore and Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons. The school's motto, and we're not making this up, is Omnia Exteres, which translates to, "Let it all hang out." Its mission statement reads like an academic buzzword bingo card, boasting a local and global commitment to social justice, diversity, environmental stewardship, and service in the public interest. Bernie Sanders couldn't have said it better. One expression of Evergreen's commitment to diversity was an annual tradition called the National Day of Absence. This event entails minority faculty and students leaving campus for a day to make a statement, followed by a day of reunification when everyone appreciates everyone else a bit more or sings Kumbaya. It's probably not the most effective use of 2 days of higher learning, but it sounds pretty harmless, right? It was. Until 2017, when Evergreen wanted to change things up. Instead of minority students and faculty leaving campus for the day, they would show up. White students and faculty would stay away. When he heard the plan announced in a faculty meeting, Weinstein assumed I had misunderstood what had been said. But he soon found there was no mistake. The administration of the college made it clear that they were strongly encouraging white people not to come to school on that day. Weinstein found that hard to stomach. This was people organizing this protest, telling others not to show up to a public college on a particular day because of the color of their skin, he noted. In an email to the all-faculty listserv, he promised to be on campus teaching that day. On the day of absence, Brett Weinstein biked to campus, as was his routine. The first sign that something was amiss came during his first class. An anxious former student flagged him down to tell him that a mob of students outside the building was chanting for him to be fired. When Weinstein tried to engage the protesters, he faced a wall of accusations about racial insensitivity. He tried to reply, but found he couldn't finish a sentence. Finally, exasperated, he blurted, "Would you like to hear the answer or not?" Several students shouted, "No," and kept on haranguing him. Demonstrations on racial issues, in some cases targeting Weinstein, continued in the coming weeks. As the protesters grew louder and more aggressive, Evergreen administrators seemed only more eager to appease them in hopes that the problem would just go away. But this only lent the movement legitimacy, which in turn emboldened more extreme behavior. A giant snowball of crazy rolling down a mountain faster and faster, getting bigger and gaining momentum. In late May 2017, demonstrators occupied Evergreen's administration building, storming in and chanting, "Hey, hey, ho, ho, racist teachers got to go." College President George Bridges agreed to a public meeting to discuss the issues. Weinstein figured he should show up to address any allegations lodged against him. Let's not forget what Weinstein's sin was: daring to show up for work on a workday. Whatever illusions Weinstein may have had about the meeting being a civil, open public forum to discuss important issues went down the tubes early on. Before the public meeting started, student organizers admonished any white participants to give up chairs to minority students. Another announcement told white participants to leave water and refreshments alone. Like the chairs, those were reserved for minority students. Once organizers had finished telling people what they could do and where they could go based on their skin color, they were finally ready to address the school's racial issues. Sure enough, the open forum quickly descended into another excuse for students to yell at Weinstein. This time, the president of the college, the guy who was supposed to be in charge, was there in the room, and he showed no evidence that he was willing or able to do anything to stop it. A text from a former student tipped Weinstein off that some of the protesters would try to stop him from leaving the room. They let him leave, but when a female student tried to engage Weinstein and ask him questions, other protesters berated her and later forced her to read an apology letter at a public rally. The morning after the protests, Weinstein received a call from Evergreen State College Police Chief Stacy Brown. "Don't come to campus," Brown warned him. "Protesters are hunting for someone car to car, and we think it's you." She said that students had set up impromptu checkpoints at campus entrances and were searching incoming vehicles. President Bridges had ordered Brown and her police department not to interfere. The morning after being warned by the school's police chief, Weinstein took his bike ride into town, only to see protesters posted along his typical commute route, eagerly tapping at their phones as he pedaled by. The protesters continued watching him as he beelined for the Evergreen State College Police Department, only to be told that the campus police could do nothing for him. "You're not safe on campus, and you're not safe anywhere in town on your bicycle," they told him. Evergreen is describing a future that is rapidly approaching, Weinstein now warns. He and his wife, fellow biology professor Heather Hying, have both left the school. While Weinstein freely admits that what happened to him was an extreme case, you can look at other college campuses and see the trend in the direction of an illiberal mob mentality. The whole point of college used to be expanding the mind. Academia gave you the opportunity to think about things in brand new ways. And yet today, walk onto many of America's most prestigious university campuses, and you'll find a culture that is the complete antithesis of open-minded intellectual inquiry. Identity politics and political correctness have taken over. Leftist mobs are enforcing a strict code that defines acceptable speech and thought and rules anything else out of bounds. Trigger warnings and safe spaces shield students from any concepts that might upset this delicate construct. Dissenters from the new orthodoxy are ostracized, vilified, threatened, and even physically attacked. Opposing viewpoints are shut down. Visiting speakers are shut out. Faculty and administrators, whose job it is to help enlighten younger minds, act as hapless enablers, giving free rein to student activists whose passion outreaches their emotional maturity. The values that supposedly define academia, the pursuit of knowledge and the open exchange of ideas, have become sad casualties. Free thought is not allowed if it broaches concepts deemed problematic. When you enroll at a college or university today, you can expect 4 years of being told what to think and precious few opportunities for critical thinking. But hey, at least you can pay 6 figures for your college education and emerge with crippling debt. Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla, whose no safe spaces appearances on college campuses are documented in the film of the same name, produced by Mark Joseph, are probably not the guys you would expect to be hitting the road together. What does a conservative Jewish intellectual, Dennis, have in common with a comedian who lived with a stripper, worked as a carpenter, and co-hosted The Man Show, Adam? And why would they want to team up with the son of Christian missionaries who made a name for himself with his work on films, The Passion of the Christ, and The Chronicles of Narnia, Mark? Most people recognize Dennis Prager as a fixture on the Los Angeles radio airwaves since 1982. He has been nationally syndicated since 1999. His writings include New York Times best-selling books and a weekly syndicated column. When Dennis was growing up in Brooklyn, New York, few would have pegged him as a future scholar. In high school, Dennis was not just a class clown. He had his own chair named after him in the principal's office. He did the minimum amount of homework, none, and ranked in the bottom third of his class. On the other hand, Dennis wasn't the typical troublemaker either. He took his schooling seriously enough to organize a student movement to crack down on cheating at his school. The fact that this wasn't met with spitballs and wedgies from other students tells you all you need to know about how, even back then, people found Dennis pretty likable. His parents, like his school, were Orthodox Jewish. But by Dennis's sophomore year of high school, they realized they would need to try an unorthodox parenting style with their son. They cut him a deal. Dennis would get a modest weekly allowance, and he could explore New York City and do as he liked, so long as he made it back to the family's Shabbat dinner table on Friday evening. It worked. Rather than waste his time and money, young Dennis explored classical music and Russian language and culture, studying both extensively on his own. During this time, he formed what would become a lifelong friendship with Joseph Telushkin, later a rabbi and leading Jewish thinker, with whom Dennis would write The 9 Questions People Ask About Judaism. When high school ended, Dennis's self-directed education had left him with less than stellar grades. With more selective schools out of reach, he enrolled at Brooklyn College. It ended up being a life-changing move. There, Dennis won the annual college award given to one of 2,500 students in the sophomore class, a 1-year scholarship to study anywhere in the world. He chose England. In April of that year, he visited Israel, where friends arranged a meeting between him and representatives of the Israeli government. This meeting set his life on a new course. At that time, the Cold War cast the shadow of possible nuclear war across the globe. The Soviet Union, still a formidable and dangerous communist superpower, needed to maintain a veil of ignorance around its people. For Soviet communists to stay in power, they had to hide the superior standard of living enjoyed in capitalist countries, and they needed to detain any would-be defectors who had seen life on the other side. The Israeli government was looking for someone to smuggle Jewish religious items into the Soviet Union and to smuggle out names of Jews who wanted to defect to Israel. It was the perfect job for a devout Jew who had spent his free time studying Russian language and culture. In other words, it was the perfect job for Dennis, who also knew Hebrew. While it wasn't exactly the stuff of a Hollywood action movie, it was still a pretty risky endeavor. Dennis might not have been James Bond, but he was at least James Bondstein. When Dennis returned to the United States after his adventures with Cold War intrigue, he started lecturing about his experiences. In fact, the former class clown and middling student even became a college professor for a time. After he moved to Los Angeles a few years later, his reputation as a speaker led to a Sunday night radio show about religion, which eventually grew into the daily, nationally syndicated Dennis Prager Show. Dennis always recognized the need to keep growing his audience, reaching more, and more importantly, younger people. In 2012, he and his longtime producer Alan Estrin founded Prager University. In short, 5-minute online videos, Dennis and other lecturers would provide fact-based, easily digestible lectures on diverse topics such as politics, parenting, finance, and life skills. PragerU doesn't have a brick-and-mortar location, and it can't give you an accredited degree. But if you are interested in learning and are intellectually curious, you can find information there that will expand your mind and extend your perspective. PragerU is a place for the pursuit of truth, knowledge, and clarity, a lifelong passion for Dennis. By 2018, PragerU had 1 billion views a year, with 65% of its viewers under the age of 35. In 2011, when Dennis Prager interviewed podcaster and comedian Adam Carolla, he found someone who shared many of those passions and had arrived at many of the same truths, albeit via a wildly different path. Adam grew up in North Hollywood, California. After high school, he drifted into construction. He also taught boxing lessons on the side and took comedy classes at The Groundlings, the famous improv comedy troupe in Los Angeles. Apart from a brief community college stint, those classes represented the closest Adam actually got to attending college. He spent his free time doing stand-up comedy at open mic nights, sometimes standing in endless lines with dozens of other comics, only to be turned away from the stage before he could perform. In 1994, after hearing about a charity boxing match between Los Angeles area radio personalities, Adam showed up at the radio station and offered his training experience. He was tasked with mentoring a morning sports anchor named Jimmy Kimmel. They formed a connection that helped Adam break into comedy writing, and their friendship continues to this day. Adam reached a national audience when he was tapped to co-host the radio program Loveline with Dr. Drew Pinsky, which soon became a nightly staple on MTV. When giving relationship advice, he used his own observations from North Hollywood High, comparing the seemingly easy success enjoyed by students from strong, loving families with the lack of social mobility suffered by students, like himself, from broken homes. After leaving Loveline, Adam joined Dennis on the airwaves as a syndicated radio host. His time on the air would not match Dennis's longevity, though. His show was canceled in 2009 as part of a format change at his flagship station, KLSX Los Angeles. Having built an audience over the years, Adam decided to try something that was quite new at the time. He launched his own podcast in February 2009, when the medium was still in its infancy and no one had built a successful standalone podcast. The Adam Carolla Show was an instant success, and the Guinness Book of World Records recognized it in 2011 as the most downloaded podcast. In the near decade since its launch, Adam's single podcast has evolved into a profitable media network. And the best perk of all? No matter what he does or says, Adam can't get fired from this job. When Adam joined Dennis's show for an interview in 2011, it became immediately clear that despite taking very different paths in life, they shared important values. Since they both value initiative, Dennis and Adam decided to do something about the free speech problem. So, in 2012, they started appearing together on college campuses. If the faculty and administration wouldn't ask students to think critically, Dennis and Adam could bring the public forum to them. Still, they couldn't bring that forum to each of the hundreds of colleges and universities across America, or could they? In 2016, they decided to film their experiences traveling from campus to campus. At that point, veteran producer and marketer Mark Joseph got involved. Mark, Dennis, and Adam chronicled Dennis and Adam's No Safe Spaces tour, a tongue-in-cheek reference to the insular bubbles that had been forming around college students for years, including their travel and their attempts to stimulate the American mind. Mark, who is responsible for the No Safe Spaces title, had made a name for himself in multiple media forms, developing and marketing films such as The Chronicles of Narnia, producing The Passion of the Christ, original songs inspired by the film, serving as producer on films starring legends like Jerry Lewis and Martin Sheen, writing columns for HuffPost and USA Today, and authoring books on music, religion, and pop culture. Originally, Mark pitched actor and comedian Tim Allen, who had been a fan of one of Mark's previous movies, about the possibility of doing a docudrama together called My Safe Space. Ultimately, Mark and Tim decided to pursue making a narrative movie about a president instead, which left this project still out there. Mark then connected with producer R.J. Moeller, who had originally connected Adam and Dennis, who had already been speaking on college campuses and were developing a film idea, and merged the two concepts. The idea Mark wanted to convey with the title was simple. We already have a safe space, and it's called America. The First Amendment makes our country a safe space in which ideas can be shared freely. Tim Allen agreed to join a comedy roundtable for the film. The official launch of the No Safe Spaces tour was December 1, 2016, at California State University, Northridge, CSUN, a public campus in Southern California. We made the arrangements and began to get excited. What an opportunity this would be to help students open their minds and their perspectives, to demonstrate that people from different backgrounds could find common ground and engage in an important dialogue. Even if people disagreed with what Dennis and Adam were saying, at least they would be talking, debating, and learning. Then, CSUN said Dennis and Adam were too controversial, and they canceled the event. The gauntlet had been thrown down. That's when we knew we had to step up our game. Extra credit. In the course of making the No Safe Spaces film, Adam and Dennis had the chance to talk with some of the most insightful minds involved with academia today. Many of them are quoted in the book, but some of these conversations warrant extra attention. At the end of selected chapters, we'll include an extra credit section with some of the best ideas and concepts we encountered told in the speaker's own words, with light editing for clarity, during the interviews. Chapter 2. Safe Spaces versus Free Speech. California State University Northridge didn't have a problem with either Dennis or Adam. They didn't mind Dennis's background as a provocative conservative commentator. They didn't care that Adam had created and co-hosted a Comedy Central show that ended each weekly episode with scantily clad girls bouncing on trampolines. And remember the Juggy Dance Squad? CSUN knew all that was going on, and they still approved the two of them to show up. Adam and Dennis had already been to the campus a few years before, so the CSUN administration knew they didn't work too blue, didn't litter, and generally cleaned up nice. For years, Adam had traveled to college campuses with Dr. Drew Pinsky, his former co-host on the popular radio show Loveline. School administrators had zero problem.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?